Welcome back to the Hey Cuz podcast. On this episode, we feature Maureen Mountcastle, a multi-talented actress, producer, and mentor who has made her mark in film, television, and in the wellness space. She has appeared on shows like Manhunt, Unabomber, The Gifted, and Under the Dome, as well as a host of television commercials. Beyond acting, Maureen has produced films like Trainwreck and Suit Yourself. She truly embodies the idea that if your dream job doesn't exist, you must create it. Family, please help me welcome Maureen Mountcastle. Hello and welcome back to the Hey Cuz podcast, your favorite Cuzcast, where here you are either a real cousin or a play cousin. And today we have I'm not going to say if or not she's a real cousin or play cousin. You'll have to listen to the end. But her name is Maureen Mountcastle. What's up, cuz? Hey, cuz.
Hey, cuz. How are you?
I'm doing good, Maureen. You've heard a little bit about her in the opening, but I will say that she is also passionate. She's a passionate person. She's about a lot of things. And some of the things that we want to get into today is her passion about guiding actors and their families to help them navigate the film industry. And to top it all off, she is a dedicated health coach with Optavia. So I don't know if we have time to pack all of that in today, but I want to say that she truly embodies the idea and her expression that if you're not doing your dream job or doing what you love, create it. I love that. You have such a diverse career in music, television, and film. What has been your most rewarding part?
Well, I really didn't get started in film and television until I was might have been about 38 years old. I had started in theater.
Wait, you're not 38 now?
No, I'm twice. No, I'm not twice that, but I'm.
No, we don't need to know, but I just
celebrated my 60th birthday. Oh. So as a child, I always did musical theater. I thought that was what I wanted to do. That was the path I was going to pursue. And I went to Chapel Hill. I didn't get to go to NYU, which was the school of my dreams. And I had gotten in, but we had some family issues and we had moved to North Carolina. So I wound up at Chapel Hill, which of course is a wonderful school.
Yeah.
But they didn't really have an undergraduate program that focused so much on drama. And I did major in drama there, but I didn't really get to do any musical theater there. So I wound up doing stuff in Raleigh, and then I got married. And then I got an airline job thinking, well, I'll get an agent in New York and an agent in LA. And that's how I'll deal with living in Raleigh, which at the time didn't have much of a film or television industry going yet. So then fast forward to getting pregnant twice, having my children, becoming the PTA vice president, and getting involved in some charity work. And then the airline job wound up, they closed the hub. So then it turned out that my daughter was super talented and got booked on a Disney tour that went around the world. And right at that same time, we have both been signed with an agency that had just opened in Raleigh called Talent One. And I really hadn't done any film or television. And so I think that part of what I do now in Lumina Talent, which I chose that name because I lived on Lumina Avenue. And I like the idea of lighting the path for someone because if you're a new actor, especially in film and television, you just don't know where to get started. You don't know what those first steps are. Yeah. And I kind of had to figure it out myself, but between Marley and myself, because we traveled the world. We went all around the US and then the UK for 3 or 4 months, which meant on location education, which meant very complicated stuff with the North Carolina school system. And so when I got back from tour, I had started working pretty consistently in commercials and doing some independent films and a few, TV shows and things like that. And other children within the Raleigh community, there's quite a bit of talent there. Some of them got cast in tours, and my agent had referred all the moms to me, like, how did you do this? And so that's sort of how it began. And I did it for many years without turning it into a business. I just would share my knowledge. And then I realized there was a real need for that, and that the way that I went about it, which was to do a lot of independent films through film schools like School of the Arts and
Mhm.
UNCG when I was living in the Triangle area. But that was really a great way at the time to gain the experience you need in front of the
Mhm.
camera and to learn, what it's like to be on set and what's expected of you as an actor. And so there were little things like that, like making sure that you had a reel at the time. And that it's a very, very chicken or the egg thing when it comes to acting, right? Like you can't get
Mhm.
an agent if you don't have a reel, but you can't get a reel if you don't have you can't get work if you don't have an agent. So what do you do?
Mhm.
So I figured out a few things, and I like to pass that knowledge on to new people that are getting started in the business and just don't know where to go. I help them get their headshots. I teach them how to audition for film and television and what's expected on set and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you have done a lot with both parents and with youth, and we'll get into how we connect towards the end, family. But what advice do you often give parents and
oh,
um, about how to navigate the industry and the students that you have? What would you say
well,
is one piece of advice?
the first really important piece of advice is this what your child truly wants to do?
Hmm.
Because people have this glamorized idea of film and television. And
Hmm.
it is a
Yeah.
lot of long hours and it's a lot of waiting around in your trailer, your little honey wagon, waiting and being bored. And sometimes parents will push their kids into it. The kids will do one or two jobs and they wind up hating it
Uh,
and they didn't have fun and there's a lot of pressure. And so if it's not a burning desire for your child and it's not the only thing that they want to do, I would say there's probably a lot of other things that they could do that might bring them joy and fulfillment than
mhm,
this very
mhm,
difficult business that's super competitive and can be very stressful. But if you have a child who, and I was like this from the age of maybe 4 years old, I never had any other answer to the question of what do you want to be when you grow up than to be
mhm,
an actress. I just knew that that was my path and that's what I wanted to do. So I find that when I'm taking on a new client, a new kid, I really look for those clues to see, because a lot of times what's happened is the parent will bring me the child and the child's adorable, of course, and
mhm.
can do some things and maybe could work. But I find that it's actually the parent that really and truly is the one that wanted to do this. I think I heard somewhere that the biggest indicator of it, of where a child will go in life is the unrealized dream of the parents. I
Wow.
think that's proven to be really true. So
Wow.
I've actually had a lot of parents who've come to me with their kids, and then I've talked to them on the side, and it turns out that this is what they always really wanted to do. And I said, okay, well, let's work on you then. And the
Really?
child, sometimes the child will continue, sometimes they won't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I'll say less about that in this moment, but I will say more about that later. Um, you had a film that did real well on the festival circuit, your short film, Suit Yourself.
Thank you.
Can you tell me what that experience was like?
That was a really cool
And
experience.
what did you learn from it?
Well, I probably learned the most on the feature length film that I made called Trainwreck that was directed by Andy Lane.
Hmm.
And the fact that we got it done, no one went to jail, everyone got paid, and it turned out pretty nice was
Oh,
was
that
really
sounds
kind
like
of
an
I
interesting
consider
something to get into later. No one went to jail.
yeah, I considered that one sort of my grad school, if you will, for producing. I actually fell into producing. I had no idea that my experience as a airline representative, where I used to have to book people who had just missed their connections, had no
Mm.
hotels, had to get new flights, all
You're
of
like a
those skills
concierge.
and yes, all those skills in coordinating things that and then being a PTA vice president where I had to get people to do things for me for free and
Hmm.
volunteer
Hmm.
and ask for being willing to ask for locations and things that you needed from the community. That was another skill that I didn't realize is an excellent skill for a line producer to have. So I really learned a lot in both of those movies. When I moved to Wrightsville Beach, I think this was like 2008 or 2009 that we made Suit Yourself. And that
Hmm.
was a really fun little short film that we did as part of the Sundance Film Festival contest. It was kind of like a 48-hour film festival
Mhm.
where you had one line of dialogue and one prop, and everybody had a different genre, and you had to shoot the movie within, I think, 48 hours and then turn it in and edit it. And so it
Oh,
was kind of a class project
yeah.
within Tracy Kilpatrick, who's a well-known casting director,
Yes.
had an acting class back in the day. And there was this really wonderful actor. His name was Tony Schnur, and he very sadly recently passed away a couple of years ago. And so we used Tony because he was just so good in acting class and so funny. And it was a story about, based on a true story about a young man who was autistic, like pretty severely autistic. And if you asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up, he just always would say, I want to wear a suit. I want a job where I can wear a suit. So the film is called Suit Yourself. And he winds up working in a funeral home in the end. And it's actually a very funny story. It's really cute, really heartwarming, and it was a true story. So it did quite well. We went to the Durango Film Festival and the Kent Film Festival, which was near and dear to my heart because I went to Kent School, and a couple other film festivals. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
I actually made a lot of really good friends that I'm still friends with to this day that I used on that film here in Wilmington. So it was a great way to kind of launch my career
So
here.
you're behind the scenes and in front of the scenes, which I personally think that that is something that's necessary, especially if you're any kind if you're in any kind of entertainment medium. Um,
Yeah.
I do music and other things, but it's also important to be on the production side of it. I think, especially as a woman, learning not just being present out front, but also being able to see behind the scenes. And one of the hardest things I learned over the years was, taping yourself or building something in the backdrop yourself is the hardest thing to do because you micromanage all of your things a little bit more. And I was talking to another actor about that on another podcast and another episode of our podcast. And it's what we do. But I think it trans helps you transition into a better person on screen, especially when you're taking guidance from someone. But you have a TV pilot that you are developing about your
Yes.
mysterious hometown, Oriental, North Carolina. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Sure. So this
Okay.
is a passion project. It was written in 2016, so it's been around for a while by a really wonderful writer who also, since unfortunately passed away recently. His name was John Ward,
Mhm.
and it was just during the time when he first got ill that he actually had time on his hands, and he was referred to me because I had this idea by my friend Chris Bromley, who's a unit production manager for a lot of film and television, and he introduced me to John, who wrote my script for me. We had many telephone conversations where I gave him the idea and what I wanted to do, and so we kind of co-created and collaborated on this really cool idea that it's a town, a very interesting town that if you sail, you probably have heard of because it's along the intercoastal. So
Mhm.
if you're taking a boat from New Jersey, say up to Florida or down to Florida, you would stop along the intercoastal. And so it's a very small town. There's something like 9,000 sailboats and 900 residents or something like that.
Mhm.
So it's very sailing oriented. And I got the idea sitting at the coffee shop called The Bean, which is a really, honestly, one of the coolest coffee shops you'll ever see.
It's
It's
called what
right,
again?
it's called The Bean,
The
The
Bean.
Bean,
Okay.
which was the original title of the TV show. And so I got the idea just sitting there. It was while my mom was unfortunately sick with cancer, and I would go and have her smoothies made at the Bean, and I'd sit
Mhm.
and just listen and hear all these crazy different accents, and you just never knew who was going to blow into the Bean, right? From wherever, whatever country they were coming from or city or whatever. And so I started asking around about the most interesting backstories of people that live in Oriental. And it turns out there's a lot of FBI, there's a lot of CIA, there's a lot of people kind of hiding in plain sight in this little town. Um, and it's true. I mean, there really are some interesting people. And so that's kind of how the germ of the story idea came about, this town that was full of kind of dark secrets. And in the
Mhm.
coffee shop, there's a being, and she's part alien. I don't want to give too much away, but anyway,
Okay.
she infuses the coffee with light. And once you drink the coffee, you can no longer tell a lie. So all of your
How
secrets come out.
fun.
And it's like what happens when a town full of shade, uh, or wait, what happens when the light of truth hits a town full of shade? That was kind of our tagline. So anyway,
Man,
when
that
a
is
few
pretty good.
Thank you. A few stumbling blocks along the way happened. COVID, John passed away, a lot of other things that we had in mind and in place to get the ball rolling kind of fell through. So I am really determined this year that I'm going to do a rewrite because now it needs to be updated. And there's a lot of TV shows that deal with an alien type theme, and this one's going to be very different because it's going to be more positive as opposed
Positive.
to like
Yeah.
aliens coming in and
Coming in.
taking over and killing
Right.
everybody.
Yeah. Well, Chris won't enjoy that at all. I'm just kidding. um,
Well, tell him I'll see
you
if I can get Sterling K. Brown in it, and then maybe.
I'll tell him you said that. Listen, I wanted to sort of off the path, but just spinning off of the beam, this film that you're working on.
Yeah,
You shared recently a photograph with me of you and your mother that I want to, a photograph of your mother and how beautiful she really, really, really was. And you have her hair and other things, and I hope you don't mind us sharing it right here.
oh
Um,
yeah,
but you also shared with me a song that you heard one day that you guys, I don't know if that was the place where you all were together and there would be a favorite song that she would love to sing and you heard it recently. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that and
yeah.
also if some of that segues into this film?
Yeah, because the film, or it's not a film, I'm sorry, the TV show,
I'm sorry, the TV show.
definitely some of the characters, one's based on me and my sisters,
Mhm.
and one of the plots is my mother is
Okay.
passing away from with cancer, and we're all
Yeah.
taking care of her, and some of the family secrets come out, and so yeah, that does apply. But yeah, there's this song that my mother sang at my wedding, at my sister's wedding, and it was kind of her go-to song, and it was called "I Wish You Love."
Okay.
And I was telling my one sister that I often hear when I ask for a message from my mother, it usually comes in the form of a song. She was also a singer.
Mm.
And so my sister didn't really believe me, but this one day recently, I was in Oriental and my sister's house overlooks my mother's house. So I walked down the stairs and I was walking out to the dock. We were going out on the boat and I said, Mom, I haven't heard from you for a while. I'd really like to hear from you. Send me a message. So we went out on the boat. And the first thing that happened was my daughter had sent me a song from the show The Notebook, and
Mhm.
it was called Don't You Worry. And it was basically a mother talking to her daughter and saying, everything's going to be all right. Don't you worry. And so I was listening to that, and it sounded so much like my mother's voice. I started weeping. You know, that feeling that
Mhm.
washes over you
Yeah.
when you just feel the true presence of, God and angels and
Mhm.
something otherworldly. So that happened. I tried to get my sister to listen to the song, but it lost its translation for her because she didn't understand the backstory behind it.
Mhm.
So then I was telling her though, I was like, listen, this is how mom communicates to me. So she was like, yeah, yeah, whatever. And then we walked into the brewery a little later. And at the minute we walked into the brewery, the song I Wish You Love, the woman was singing. And so I looked at my sister and I actually had the wherewithal to film her. I put the camera on my sister and I said, whose song is this? And she said, oh my God. She started crying. She
Yeah,
said, yeah, that's
when you
mom's
shared
song.
that story with me, it touched me. But thank you for revisiting that story. I have one more question to ask before I reveal our family connection.
So great.
You have coached over 280 people, nearly 300 people with nutrition, and y'all, she tried to coach me too, but pray for your girl.
I'm not done with you yet.
That's why I said pray for me because she's not done with me yet. But you have helped them with their personal health journeys, and you have shared lots of photographs and videos. And you're going to have to find Maureen's Facebook page and to see all of that. We're not going to post that here. You're going to have to put in the work to see just what she does. Um, but what was the turning point for you? that made you want to help other people?
So my whole life, I always struggled with that extra 15 to 20, sometimes 30 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day when I got started, everybody on TV was like a size zero. So me being like at the time a
Yeah.
size six was considered too big for
That's
television.
not happening in my community. No zeros over
Yeah.
here.
And that is a really lovely change that we see now, is that it's not
Yes,
like that anymore. It's
absolutely.
really not. But
Mm-hmm.
it did kind of embed in me this always feeling like I needed to lose weight and get in shape.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always enjoyed exercise, and I've always been willing to do whatever, crazy thing came along. I'll be like, okay, I'll try that and see if it works. And I'd always been able to lose weight, but I'd never really been able to maintain and
Maintain.
stay at the weight that I feel best at.
Mm-hmm.
And so when this program came along, it was right. I had been to the doctor and she said my blood sugar was high. She wanted me to try metformin. She's like, oh, you might lose a little bit of weight. And so I knew that that had to do with balancing your blood sugar. And when I heard that this plan is a low glycemic index plan, I knew enough to say, well, let's try that first because I'd rather lose it without having to take drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So I started the program. I couldn't believe how easy it was, how much I liked it, how much less inflammation I had. I was sleeping better. I had great energy. I lost 34 pounds in 4 months. And it just seemed like, oh my God, if I had known about this in my 20s, I would have saved myself a lot of stress and
Mm-hmm.
worry.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe that I like to send the elevator down for whatever it is. If I learned something and it works for me, I want to share it. You
That part.
probably, I think I probably would have done this job without getting paid.
Yes.
Just because I know for some women, so much of our self-esteem and self-confidence and
It's
self-worth,
wrapped around how we.
unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
is kind of tied into like how we feel about ourselves. And
Yeah.
when you're carrying that extra weight, some people are fine and they're happy and they don't care and
And they
they
look
like
good with
their
the extra weight. My
yeah.
grandmother used to say, nobody wants a bone but a dog. I'm like,
Right. And that's
there's a
great
lot of
for
dogs with bones.
right. And
I'll say a
whatever
little less about that.
that's right. Whatever weight you feel good at, that's great. But for me, I knew where I wanted to be, and this program worked. And so my daughter and my sisters wanted to do it, and so I was coaching them anyway. And my coach said, "Why don't you become a coach?" And I really did it just for the accountability. But what
Okay.
I found is that it's been so rewarding, and I have made so many great friends, and helping people to find themselves again and feel good about themselves again
Hmm.
is probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done.
Yeah, helping people redefine themselves. Now that's powerful. Um, Maureen, I want to thank you personally for coming on. I have to say a little bit about Maureen, how I met her. Now, our daughter was taking acting classes. My husband was doing car pickup at school, and this guy approached him and said, "You think your daughter wants to act?" And he says, "Oh, she's already got an Oscar. She's always acting and, acting out." But no, she's not a bad kid, but she is drama queen. Okay. They all are in middle school. But he said sure. So she started taking acting classes, and then we meet Maureen, and academics started to take more of a precedence with Samantha than acting. And so one day I go into her class. And Maureen's looking at me like she goes, "I think I can get you cast in something." Let me tell y'all, this is the single person that is responsible for me not being in one, but in two major television series I've been cast in. Yes, applause. Thank you, Maureen. So I will tell you, when I'm doing auditions, and she's my reader, there are days that I'm just like, girl, can we put this down and start again? Because she's like, no, Olivia, I need you to do it this way. I need you to do it that way. But I have her to thank. And I will say that I am a student of Maureen's in terms of acting. She is my coach, and she is also my friend. So we're going to post her description down in the link, all of them. And I encourage you to reach out to her. And if you have any questions about anything, she is very attentive and very accountable. So I had to just get that plug in.
Thank you.
Sorry. And I love you. Drum roll. Are we cousins or are we play cousins? Yeah, well, I've already said so. We're play cousins. But she knows that I love her I love you like a play cousin girl.
Yes, and I love you right back.
Well, Maureen, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy life to come on Hey Cuz podcast. And Maureen's going to be coming back to give us, as I always say, good guidance in the areas that she is an expert or that she is a professional, and definitely on nutrition, definitely on, anything that you want to come on and any panel that we may have where we need your insight. And I just want to thank you in advance for being willing to come back on for that.
Well, I would be delighted. It's been wonderful talking with you.
All right. And until next time, bye, cuz.
Bye, cuz. Hi, this is Maureen Mountcastle, and you are tuned into the Hey Cuz podcast with the incomparable Olivia J.
Thank you for joining this episode of the Hey Cuz podcast with me, your host, Olivia J. I hope that you will like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to post your comments. We'd love to hear from you.